Special town hall to address killings across Nigeria holds in Zamfara State.
Airport Council International begins 5-day examination of security and safety at Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport in Abuja.
Memorial holds in honor of the late international diplomat Kofi Annan in Abuja.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we take a look at 17 years after the GSM revolution. Rights of the consumer.
August 2001 ushered in a new dawn in the Nigerian telecommunication industry.
And the successful auction of digital mobile licenses marked the beginning of what is now known as the telecommunications revolution in Nigeria.
And Kingsley, this destroyed the monopoly of the Nigerian Telecommunications Limited, NITEL.
And of course, prior to August 2001, there were fewer than 500,000 phone lines, mostly analog in Nigeria, with the country having very poor ranking in the area of telecommunications development. But in the last 17 years, active phone lines in Nigeria have increased to over 150 million. The telecommunication revolution also birthed millions of jobs, new businesses, new lifestyles for Nigerians, as well as transparency in governance. And GSM has also been a catalyst that has aided growth in many sectors of the economy. And this has placed the country amongst the 5 fastest growing telecommunications market in the world, the fastest growing mobile market at some point, and that was a position it held for 5 years, surviving even the global recession season. But despite the huge profits made by investors in the sector and the overall success recorded from these investments, the sector is rife with challenges, most of which infringe on the rights of consumers. And some of those challenges, of course, include high tariff, unsolicited text messages, as well as call deductions, network issues, fake telephones, amongst many others. And we also recall that the first set of GSM providers pegged the cost of making a call at 50 naira a minute and demanded quite a huge sum for SIM cards. But the situation improved with time as consumers now have the per second billing option, and SIM cards cost almost nothing today. And GSM operators in the country have over time insisted that the current infrastructural base in the sector is responsible for the inability to meet consumers' needs and the regulatory standards of the Nigerian Communications Commission, which have frequently sanctioned the GSM operators over poor service delivery. But 17 years after GSM service was introduced in Nigeria, how have consumers fared? Have they had a fair deal? What future plans do the operators and the regulatory authorities have for consumers in Nigeria's telecommunications sector? And this is our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. Welcome to this edition of the program. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest television network. My name is Kirin Umayo. And I'm Kingsley Osalolo. I join my colleague here and also welcome you to the program, in the course of which we shall bring you our regular complimentary segments. And this, of course, includes newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and others. We're kicking off right now with the news. And our guide is our colleague, Miriam Apata. Hi, Miriam.
Hello, good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Welcome to the news. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, has attributed success recorded in Zamfara State in curbing armed bandits, cattle rustling and other criminal activities to the collaboration among the security agencies in the country. The minister was speaking at a special town hall meeting on federal government measures to curb killing held in Zamfara State. He called on security agencies to sustain the tempo and enjoin Nigerians to provide useful information to relevant authorities so as to win the war against banditry and terrorism in the country.
Have nothing to do with ethnicity or religion. We are dealing with the fallout of demography, environment, climate change, and pure criminality, and the neglect of several years of banditry.
Speaker Dr. Abubakar Sadiq Muhammad, in his paper titled Real Interpretation in Farmer Herders Crisis, called on stakeholders to look beyond manipulation and strive for development rather than bias or sectional issues. Airport Council International is in Abuja for the periodic examination on security and safety of Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, after it was certified last year. The inspection is towards promoting professional excellence in airport management and operations. Emmanuel Ayimiro reports that the inspection is for 5 days.
Work hand in hand with our colleagues from FAN to see whether we can improve and to see if we can pick some best practices to be duplicated in other airports.
It's a welcome development that from time to time we are being checked to ensure that you sustain your certification. We hope to listen to them, work with them. Whatever observations they do, we accept and we correct ourselves accordingly.
Now to political matters. The All Progressives Congress says it will remain focused on its vision of propagating people-oriented democratic practice through enhanced engagement with those at the grassroots as part of its strategy to ensure success at the polls in the 2019 general elections. National Chairman of the party, Comrade Adams Oshomole, stated this while swearing in the new APC Chairman of the Taraba State.
My prayer is that all of you will work together with everybody, as I mean everybody in Taraba State who is in APC, vertically and horizontally, to ensure that there's all-inclusive participation.
The people of Taraba are very willing and yearning to see change. And that change can only be brought by All Progressives Congress.
The re-election bid of President Muhammadu Buhari remains top priority to the Kano State chapter of the All Progressives Congress and the state government led to the inauguration of the Buhari-Kanduje volunteer groups in the 44 local government areas in the state. Governor Abdullahi Umar Kanduje, while inaugurating the groups, gave them marching order to ensure the success of the party in all elections. Governorship candidates of major political parties in Osun State have signed a peace accord, all agreeing to ensure a violence-free process before, during, and after the September 22nd election. The peace accord meeting was organized by the Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of Osun, Oyo, and Ondo states, Ibrahim Danjuma.
I address and approach our supporters
on our own part as leaders of our political party. We should bring peace.
I want to guarantee free, fair, and credible election.
These miscreants that will likely consume drugs and cause problems are being controlled. We carry weight at least some of these black spots, vulnerable areas, all with a view to making sure that we get the bad boys out of business.
Ahead of the burial of the late Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, this week, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the United Nations system in Nigeria have held a memorial in honor of the late international diplomat. Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyema again said the legacies of late Kofi Annan will continue to inspire other diplomats to work for the good of humanity.
Always very measured, softly spoken, but also very firm in his convictions, and showed a lot of courage, as we saw, in many very difficult situations.
Let us not weep for Kofi Annan. Let us strive instead to attain the ideals for which he lived and died.
To live is to choose, but to choose well, you must know who you are and what you stand for.
Well, that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Win a trip to Dubai in the 2018 Three Crowns Mom of the Year promo. Visit www.femininelounge.com/competition to find out more.
3 Crowns Milk. Healthy moms, happy families.
What makes a Nigerian mom powerful?
I trust the power of Dettol's 1 capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's 1 capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
This also gets a 10. Should we use the toilet now?
Sure.
This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X. Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
When I was growing up, it wasn't an easy thing for us because my parents, they were struggling. That's why when I started playing basketball, I need to play, I need to struggle, I need to achieve. I want to make something out of it. I graduated from the Milo Secondary School Games, senior league. Then they called me that I should come and play Junior World Cup qualifiers. Following year, I was invited to the senior national team. I've been awarded as the most valuable player 5 times. My teammates made it possible. Basketball, they gave me the opportunity to have my own basketball camp, giving back to the society because you know what you've passed through. I need to show the kids that basketball really changed my life. My name is Nkechi, and this is our journey.
Nestle, good food, good life.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live for the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for us now to take some business stories, and here is our correspondent, Joy Uzo.
Welcome to Business News. We'll start with a reaction on the latest rating of Nigeria's economy by Forbes, in which its findings show Nigeria's economy emerged best economy for 2018. The major research firm published its findings on the 10 biggest economies of Africa, with Nigeria topping the list. According to Forbes, Nigeria came tops with $172 billion, which was followed by South Africa with $166.735 billion. Also on the list was Egypt as a third with $78 billion amongst others. An economic analyst commends the rating and calls for more commitment from Nigeria's public and private sector to sustain and surpass the present assessment.
Those in the private sector are required to be more serious and focused. People should begin to think out of the box to see other things that we can do to sustain the rating. Because for me, this is a very exciting rating at the moment, and it shows that Nigeria is a gold mine. It shows that the economy is going to be very successful within the next couple of years. We will almost attend to be called one of the very developed economies in the world, not just only in Africa.
Meanwhile, the Director of Monetary Policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Moses Tuli, says if government puts in at least £1 billion annually into research findings and data analysis, it will go a long way to transform the economy.
So government has to fund research and not be in a hurry to see the process of that research. Then, and only then, can the private sector join. And I think also financial institutions in Nigeria have a role to play.
He was speaking on the sidelines of this year's national conference of the Nigerian Statistical Association, NSA, held in Oka, Anambra State. Finally, the Nigerian Stock Exchange, NSE, closed in the red on Monday to begin the week. The NSE All-Share Index dropped by 1.25% to close at 33,611.69 basis points, while market capitalization stood at 12.2 trillion naira. Sun Assure led the gainers table, gaining 10%. On the other hand, Nestle topped the losers chart, dropping by 9.67%. The toast of investors was the financial sector, topped by Diamond, UBA, and GTB. On that note, we wrap up business news. Many thanks for watching. I am Joy Uzo.
Thank you, Joy. Newspaper review is next on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Baya Toya, is right here with us in the studio. It's a pleasure to have him join us. Baya, good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Kinsley, good morning. Good morning, Kere.
You're welcome, Baya.
Nigeria.
Here, let's take a look at the stories on the front pages of the papers. The story, you have politics, you have education, and you have insecurity, you have, of course, some stories on disasters. Let's take a look at Punch. About the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, the front page is quite busy, I must admit. Bakers set to increase bread prices. That's on page 25. And then next to that, you have another headline there. It says, gas explosion kills scores in Nasarawa Details can be found on pages 4 and 5. Now, 2 earpieces there beside the nameplate of the Punch newspaper. Buhari to get nomination forms from donors today. Buhari to get nomination forms from donors today. Details can be found on page 12. Now, Benue APC adopts indirect primary. Onje kicks. That's on page 18. Lead story comes with the kicker presidential ticket. Saraki, Atiku, and Kwankwanso disagree, and PDP sets up consensus committee. That can be found on page 9 in greater detail. School resumed yesterday, I believe, in most parts of the country, and that's the story that has been depicted pictorially. The two scenes there. I hope those are twins. Although a teacher helping her pupils at school resumed in Lagos on Monday. I thought they were twins, by the way. And then you can see the other pupils there, also in Abuja, when school resumed from the long holidays. Now, MTN seeks restraining order against CBN and Attorney General of the Federation. That's on page 25. Osun governorship. INEC, ICPC partner to arrest and prosecute vote buyers. That will be on page 12. And we have no confidence in INEC. That's according to PDP governors. Bandits killed 2,385 Zamfara residents in 7 years. That's according to the governor, Yari. And drug abuse destroying families, Bochi Emir laments.
All right, let's turn to the Daily Sun newspaper. Also, besides the nameplate, we have 18 burned to death in gas explosion. It's on page 4. 50 others hospitalized in Nasarawa State. Now, let's capture what the Sun has as its main headline this morning. 2019, PDP pushes for consensus candidate. And Kinsey just read a similar story on the other newspaper, and they say governors pass no confidence vote on INEC, and that's PDP governors. We are committed to credible elections, says electoral umpire as INEC. The story is on page 6. Now, stalemate in minimum wage talks. Federal government consults further. Page 7 has details of that story. Again, Southeast governors make case for Enugu Airport. You're on page 8, and that's where we get it on the Sun newspaper. Now, Buhari picks APC nomination form today as ex-IGP Abba joins senatorial race. Pages 7 and 40 is where you find these stories. Now, on the foot of the Daily Sun, Zamfara APC crisis, Governor Marfa's faction knows fate, September 14 to 11. Bayo.
Well, let's start with the human interest perspective. President Muhammad Buhari has already condoled the government and people of Nasarawa State over the fire incident. Actually, the fire started from a gas plant, and that gas plant is within a filling station. Thanks to Providence, 2 persons were killed. However, several other persons, about 37 of them, were injured, and they have been treated in hospital. In fact, the governor has given directives that they should be evacuated to the Federal Medical Center, and the state government is going to foot the bill. Similarly, flood has ravaged over 35 communities around Lapai, so much so that the Kankara Development Association had to engage the services of boat and canoe operators to evacuate people upland. However, Governor Abubakar Sani Bello has reacted, and he has allocated Kolu and Kuchi as a permanent site for the persons who are so displaced. I'm talking about the report you read about Zamfara. Armed bandits, according to Governor Yari of Zamfara State, have killed 2,385 persons in Zamfara in 7 years. That is an average of about 340 persons every year. And he was giving this account at a town hall meeting in Zamfara State. The Governor Yari said that 6,000 persons have been injured, 25,000 cattle have been rustled, and 3,000 hectares of land have been destroyed. In an agrarian community, that is very, very dangerous development. He also says that hundreds of persons have been kidnapped, so much so that they have to pay ransom before they are released. And he said, due to initiative the governor took with the police command, so far they have had about 3,000 arms that have been recovered. And he's calling on the federal government to help come to their action to stop these bandits who are taking the state to ransom. He described it as pure criminality.
Now, Bayo, the banditry in Zamfara State has become perennial, 7 years non-stop.
7 years, yes.
And, of course, the security agencies have been working hard, in curbing the menace of the bandits. But what has sustained their strength all these years?
It is sheer criminality. And you recall that not too long ago, Governor Yari said he wished to resign his position as Chief Security Officer of the state out of frustration. But that notwithstanding, they have been initiatives put together by, in fact, 4 states within that zone: Kaduna, Niger, Katsina, and Zamfara state, to curb the menace, because there are some forests within Kaduna, Zamfara area where the bandits hide and operate from. So much so that the Nigerian army too had instituted one of its operations to take that on seriously. Of recent, the Nigerian Air Force has upped its act by targeting the bandits, particularly they come from bush, attack villages, and also go back.
Yeah, apart from the stats with regard to the fatalities arising from the banditry over a period of time in Zamfara, I'm not sure what some of the resolutions are with regard to the town hall meeting that took place in Guzo, Zamfara state capital, yesterday. But a pertinent question should be, how and why did this fester for so long? What were the authorities doing until the Nigerian Air Force and indeed other military establishments moved in only some months ago? Why was this allowed to continue?
I think the major problem there confronting the Nigerian security agency could be the fact that the people are not into conventional form of attack. Yes. They attack, they ambush, attack, and retrieve. Right, so it's difficult to actually track them. I think it is only when the Nigerian Air Force, came into focus in this that they could actually spot them, from the air. And
yes, you're right, because in several instances, you find market days. People migrate to market days, and after they have traded, when they are coming in the evening, that is when these guys lay the ambush and they rob them of their hardware.
That's fine, but what is the role of intelligence?
Yes.
Intelligence
failure has been the bane in the past, and I think they all have to get their acts together to stand seriously.
The story out of Nasarawa with regard to the gas explosion and the fatalities arising therefrom. Of course, the Daily Sun was reporting the number of persons who were said to have been killed, but the authorities have said only 2 persons were killed. The Nigerian pilot also has a story, but it's Black Monday. That's how its lead story has with the headline. It says 30 killed, 40 injured in gas accidents in Nasarawa and Anambra. 17 vehicles, 2 fuel tankers, tricycles, others raised in Lafayette. That's the capital of Nasarawa. Will outlaw gas business in urban centers. That's the Speaker of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly. Saraki visits and commiserates with victims and state government. Outlawing gas business in urban centers is not the solution.
Yes. It's
so people should resort to firewood.
Yes.
When you're talking about environmental protection. I mean, that's the key thing. We have discussed on Good Morning Nigeria in the past, safety measures to be adopted by persons, who are dealing in this commodity, highly inflammable.
Yes. You recall there was an instance about a similar explosion. A gas station located very close to a petrol station. It happened somewhere in Anambra State. And so unless you make sure that inflammable material is not allocated, co-located with another one like the petrol,
the major issue
you'll be caught in trouble.
Is the location.
Yes.
They could be better located in places where people are not residing. It makes it a lot easier.
And crucially, quite aside from all of these things, it is important because some of the visuals that were shown yesterday indicated federal road safety vehicles being deployed, the federal road safety vehicles and the officials being deployed. Does Nasarawa State have a state emergency response team?
Do they have a fire service?
Do they have a fire service that can respond promptly?
All right, let's run through the headline, the Guardian newspaper. Just below the nameplate, Nasarawa City explosion. Of course, we've also read that out. But the main headline on the Guardian is oil reserve crisis looms over delay of blocks. how non-passage of petroleum bill stalls sector's outlook. And of course, on the foot of the same newspaper, PDP governors passed vote of no confidence. That we have also talked about that in other papers. Bayo, let's round off. You have other...
just very quickly from the foot of the front page of the Nigerian Pilot, two stories there. It says, one, that's in detail on page 42. Ade Osun certificate scandal investigation still ongoing. That's according to the presidency. And on page 6, in greater detail, vote buying. INEC considers banning mobile phones at polling booths.
Yes, in fact, the Osun State Resident Electoral Commissioner has been on. In fact, over the weekend, he visited religious site, the Winners Chapel and Nasfat in Osogbo, and warned categorically that they are going to make scapegoats of anybody caught in vote buying, and that is emphasizing the pronouncement by the chairman of INEC. Quickly, Kofi Annan's body has arrived in Ghana, is to be laid in state for respect, and is due to be interned, I think, on Thursday. Similarly, FIFA has now brought out what is called a 55-man World 11, and you have to have 2,500 professionals to select 11 out of these 55.
All right, let's take our editorial, which is from the Punch newspaper. Details of that editorial can be found on page 20. But the editorial is on anti-corruption war needing focus on net committees. According to the paper, the federal government recently empowered another committee to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. Now, according to the Punch, this is another cosmetic move, saying that slaying the monster of corruption requires mastering strong political will, effective coordination, and unflagging commitment by key functionaries.
Yes, the editorial is hammering on the fact that setting up a committee does not necessarily make the anti-corruption work very potent. And they cite the instances of what happened in the United Kingdom and Singapore. And it emphasized, the editorial emphasized categorically, what you need to win a corruption war successfully are two key ingredients: strong political will and a strong institution that will investigate and prosecute.
But I think that the political will, in other perspective, the political will has been established, because one may want to believe that the reason for setting up these committees is because of the complex nature of the fight against corruption. Because the committees are set out for particular assignment, right? So that will complement the other ones, to be able to come to a conclusion on a finding. I don't think the issue of a committee is wrong, because those who are driving the anti-corruption fight, they perhaps know why they should have committees.
Well, in administration, there's this balance that those who can act always act. Those who cannot act set up committees. Maybe that is the perspective the editorial is looking at. But the key ingredients are already available. The strong political will, and that is not in doubt. However, the problem has been the process of investigation and proper prosecution.
All right, Bayo Tebi, thanks a lot for being around today.
Thank you.
Tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're taking a short break. When we return, we'll be looking at the consumers' rights in the era of the GSM 17 years later.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There is no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe
or share any news. Ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now?
Sure.
This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X. Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual.
You have for the three
you are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah? I was.
You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigeria homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobo to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how we can make.
Correct.
How they cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Well, when I was growing up, it wasn't an easy thing for us because my parents were struggling. That's why when I started playing basketball, I need to play, I need to struggle, I need to achieve. I want to make something out of it. I graduated from the Milo Secondary School Games to the Senior League. Then they called me that I should come and play Junior World Cup qualifiers. Following here, I was invited to the Senior National Team. I've been awarded as the most valuable player 5 times. My teammates, they made it possible. Basketball gave me the opportunity to have my own basketball camp, giving back to the society. Because you know what you've passed through. I need to show the kids that basketball really changed my life. My name is Nkechi, and this is our journey.
Nestle, good food, good life.
All right, you're welcome back. If you just tuned in, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We are reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're Africa's largest television network. Now, it's been 17 years since telephony in Nigeria was literally democratized with the introduction of GSM telephone services. What has been the Nigerian experience in the past 17 years, especially the consumers? As a prompt for our conversation this morning, let's take this background put together by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
The year 2001 was the watershed for telecommunications in Nigeria. This was when the Global System for Mobile, that is GSM, was formally launched by President Olusegun Obasanjo in August. Before then, Ownership of phones was left to the rich, and making phone calls was a strenuous task at only public phone booths or on wealthy person's phone. Poor connection was another frustrating issue. However, the dawn of GSM in Nigeria gave the masses unlimited access to telephones, breaking the communication barriers with everyone having unhindered connection to the world from Nigeria. So far, over 150 million active connections and 93 million unique subscribers have been recorded in Nigeria. The country has also crossed the 100% tele-density mark and accounts for nearly 100 million internet users and 22 million Facebook users, making the country the largest in Africa. This has launched investment in the industry to the neighborhood of about 70 billion US dollars with more operators. But despite the achievements in the sector 17 years on, more still needs to be done for improvements as more customers are having series of complaints. Some of these include the need for lower tariffs, unsolicited text messages and deductions from telecommunications operators, as well as poor signals in some areas. The emergence of Boko Haram insurgency has threatened this major sector and destroyed some of their facilities, especially in the northeast.
And for the conversation segment, we're now being joined in the studio by the Director General of the Consumer Protection Council, Dr. Babatunde Irukera. You're welcome, DG, to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
All right, and also with us in the studio, of course, is the public affairs analyst, the man who can speak to many societal issues, and he is no other than Mr. Jide Ujo. Thanks for being with us here this morning.
My pleasure.
All right, and also in our Lagos studio is the chairman of the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators, Alton. He is an engineer, Benga Adebayo. Benga, it's good to see you this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, and thank you.
All right, gentlemen, once again, welcome to the conversation. We are hoping to be joined by an official of the regulator of the industry. If the Skype connection goes through, then we'll have him join us from South Africa. But of course, if that doesn't quite materialize, then we carry on with the conversation with the three guys that we have with us in the studios. Let's begin this chat now with our guest in Lagos, Engineer Benga Adebayo. Tell us, what has been the story in the 17 years since GSM services began in the country?
Thank you. Good morning, viewers. It's been a good story, I must say. We started from a humble beginning of 500,000 subscriber lines, like we have seen in the earlier report, and now we have crossed the over 160,000 mark. This growth has been quite rapid, but it has also come with its own attendant problems, which are normally associated with success. In the first instance, you know that the telecom sector is operating within the same infrastructure framework as other sectors of the economy. We have to provide our own power, we have to provide our own security, we have challenges of rights of way, issues of vandalization, issues of closure of sites by agents of government, and so on and so forth. And all of this today has had significant impact on our ability to deliver good quality service. When I look at where we started from 17 years ago and where we are today, it's good to say and to know that telecom has become the infrastructure of infrastructures on which several other sectors of the economy now depend. Today we talk about digital economy, today we talk about e-government and the rest of them. And all of these are services that are powered by telecommunication services. So in the early days, we tried to solve the problem of voice calls. We have gone from that to creating platforms for other sectors of the economy to thrive. And one is glad to say that within the past 17 years, telecom industry has had one of the highest GDP, has one of the contribution to GDP, has also had one of the highest foreign direct investment, has been the highest, one of the highest creators of jobs, both direct and indirect employment, and so on and so forth. And therefore, when I look at the story in 17 years, I think the industry has fared well. We're not unaware about the challenges of quality of services, but certainly that is in some cases beyond the reach of operators. A number of times, service failures as a result of actions of government in certain parts of the country, A number of times, the issues of cost is also traceable to unfavorable operating environment. I can say to you as an expert in this industry that it's cheaper to purchase bandwidth between London and Lagos than it is to purchase bandwidth between Lagos and Abuja. And that's because we do not have sufficient terrestrial fiber to deliver good quality data services and all that. So we have all of this that we are dealing with. But in spite of that, one can make bold to say that telecom today has become not just the first means of contact with many Nigerians, but has become a major driver of our economy as a nation.
Let's remain with you. From your explanation, the operators seem to be having a good deal all these 17 years, despite the fact that they have some kind of poor or bad operational environment, as you put it. Now, let me also ask you whether the consumers, who are also stakeholders in the entire scenario, are they really having a good deal too?
It's not been all good for the operators, I must say. I sit as the chairman of the Telecom Association. When we started 17 years ago, and sometime about 12 years ago, we had 35 operators who are valid and operating. Today, in my association, we are less than 15. That goes to show that the environment has been challenging, has been somewhat hostile, and it's also been difficult for some of our players to actually survive. If the environment is that easy and that friendly and returns are that good, we will not have some of the challenges that we currently have in the industry. So that said, the problems of consumers is an ongoing thing. And I must say that we take ownership for our inability to deliver, in some cases, top quality services. But in many cases, that's not due to our own problem. It's a problem created by agents of government. I'll give you an example. You have states who have created taxes and revenues aimed only at telecom operators, and refusal to pay these taxes and levies often lead to closure of sites. In some cases, when one site is closed, it could have about 20 other sites connected to it. So you could have action of government in one state, having ripple effect on 3 or 4 neighboring states around them. This will be blamed on the service provider because the one we know is the service provider. But that's actually the symptom. The cause is actually action of government of a particular state that may have led to that. In some parts of the country, we have challenges of good quality services because the cost of right of way in some parts of Nigeria today is almost as high as 70% of the cost of deploying the entire infrastructure. Taxes and levies are aimed at telecom operators. Refusal to pay this lead to disruption of services, and those who feel it, who have the major impact of this, is actually the consumers. So we have our pains, we have our problems, we have our challenges, the effect of which the consumers are feeling, and therefore we come to a time where we say that we all have to take ownership for functioning of telecom services. We all must take ownership. We are advocating also that telecom should be classified as critical national economic infrastructure and insulated from all kinds of interference. Many a times when we have disruption in services, it's not due to failure of operators, it's due to actions of government, also some kind of revenue collection agents at some point or the other. Those are some of the issues that we do have. And on the issue of consumer impact, consumer effect, you know that the regulator has got very strong consumer advocacy department, and it's a lot of penalty against operators when there are infractions that are traceable to service providers, some of which we have also read in the news.
Engineer Adebayo, we're still going to stick with you because we understand you leave us in not too distant time to attend to other issues. But one point to talk about, some of the complaints that you just highlighted again are fairly familiar to persons who read stories about telecoms operators, right-of-way taxes or levies imposed by subnational governments. How have the operators tried to manage intergovernmental relations with regard, for instance, to lobbying the Joint Tax Board or, issues pertaining to right-of-way using either the Governors Forum or the National Economic Council?
Continuous engagement. We continue to engage governments at various levels, and also we continue to engage with the various political interest groups to see that telecommunication is more of a socio-economic enabling tool, more than a revenue generation service. And we are trying to explain to them at all times that we should look at the long-term benefit of having good telecom services than the immediate gains of internally generated revenue. In some cases, we understand ourselves. In some cases, it is just difficult. Some of the governors said to us that you made an agreement with National Economic Council. That's an Abuja agreement. We don't report to Abuja. We need money in our state. And you just can't do anything. And the impact of that is that in such states, you can't do but just to manage with what you have. Because if cost of deploying infrastructure and cost of approval alone is 70% of the total cost of the project, then what do you do? In some cases, we have taxes that are as ridiculous as effluent discharge taxes, which are taxes that are applicable to all industry. We have in some cases telecom sites are being classified as business premises and are applicable taxes and levies on service providers. We have in some cases annual renewal for the site for the ground rent on which the towers are sitting. And we continue to engage them to see the long-term benefit and the immediate benefit, but in some cases it is just impossible. But as I said, it's work in progress. As we continue to advocate, we hope that we can understand ourselves more and more. The fact remains that telecommunications today is a major driver of the economy. There is nothing we do today as a nation that in one form or another we do not depend on telecom services. And therefore, the time has come that we all must take ownership, joint ownership of the infrastructure of telecom, joint ownership of smooth operation of telecom services. And in that regard, it will be better for all of us who at the end of the day are consumers of telecom services.
Despite all the challenges that you have enumerated, the operators still declare huge dividends at the end of a financial year. And that means that you are breaking even, you know, in the entire scenario. Now, juxtapose that on the fact that, consumers still complain. There are still a lot of issues, unsolicited messages and what have you. How have your people tried to see how you can curb the excesses of your men? Yeah, we seem to have lost the audio connection with Lagos there. We're going to try it again and see how it can work out. But for now, we'll return to our Abuja studios, where of course we have Jido Ojo and of course Dr. Babatunde Irukara, the Director General of the Consumer Protection Council. So may I come over to you? What's your reaction to what we've heard from Benga in Lagos in relation to the consumers?
Well, I think he's certainly done a very good job of articulating the operational constraints that the telecommunications companies experience. And I empathize. I certainly think that those are serious issues. And the one point he made about the fact that they operate in the same infrastructure ecosystem as the rest of the country is also the key point that I take home. To the extent that you're not isolated and you're not experiencing a problem that is significantly higher than what other people are experiencing, then we must find a way. But my biggest thing, because I come purely from a consumer protection standpoint, my biggest thing is that the telecommunications companies, regardless of what the challenges are, must still continue to take, in fact, expand ownership of what the consumer experience is. And looking back 17 years from the short reel before that, I think we've come a long way as a country with respect to telecommunications. And so I think it's a mixed bag in the sense that there's been quite some development, and yes, there's a significant contribution to the economy, and it's created an incredible number of jobs. But what a company must also do is the real index of their performance when they're providing a service, which they recognize is to some extent socioeconomic, can't be the bottom line. It also has to be the consumer perception. And so what's the quality of the experience? How do the consumers rate the telecommunications companies? And that for me is where their real scorecard will be. And I'll be the first to let you know that consumers appreciate the service, but consumers also complain about the service. The biggest thing for me is much less about the infrastructure deficits. It's really just much more about responsiveness. And so the vast majority of complaints that we receive about telecommunication service is responsiveness and transparency. Transparency in billing, transparency in value-added services, transparency in real usage and what people pay for. And I think that that's much less an infrastructure issue and more an internal issue with the operators. And I think, I always say this, and I think it applies in the telecommunications sector also, that anything that people pay for and feel optionless when they make those payments, when people pay you for something and they despise you but they're paying for it, it's some form of social extortion. It is some form of social extortion. And we must really take that seriously. And so what the companies must do is to personally reflect and say, all right, what is the real perception of the people we provide this service to? All over the world, when people have to pay for something, you know, there's some pushback. But generally, people still do not despise the people who provide services to them. And so they must do that. You must do a perception analysis of how your consumers, because in any case, these services are not just created, it's for people to use. So let's go back to those people. What impression of me do the people who pay me for whatever I sell, what impression of me do they have? Do they recognize that they're paying for value? Are they happy to pay me? And even when they're not happy to pay me, do they understand that in the circumstances I'm giving the best possible, but they're paying for it? If the answer to all of that is not in the affirmative, then the scorecard will be good in other areas, what you contribute to the economy and how we've built penetration and increased subscription. But the reality of it is that at the end of the day, if you characterize your service as socio-economic, then you must take on the flip side of that coin, the responsibility of how the real people who use it feel about you, the organization. And that for me is where to start and probably even where to end.
All right, Mr. Rukera, thank you very much. We saw a moment ago Engineer Benga Adebayo, Lagos Network Studios. Just before we get back to him, let's bring in Jide Ojo to give us his own perspective, 17 years on GSM services. Is the consumer any better?
It's a mixed deal. Much as I will agree with earlier speakers that we are not where we used to be in terms of telephony, but we are not where we ought to be in terms of consumer satisfaction. I stated they have 4 mobile lines. For what reason? Why should I? But it's just to get around to doing my business. And I don't think people in other clients will have more than 1 mobile line because that one is efficient, it's effective for all their communication needs. But here, you get to some place, one particular mobile line is not working, the service is poor, there is drop calls, you have to switch on to another, carry 2 or 3 mobile phones. For what reasons? 17 years on, this should not be our story. We ought to have improved much more in terms of infrastructure. I do appreciate the challenge that mobile telephone operators face, particularly in a developing economy like Nigeria, where they have to largely provide their own infrastructure. Peradventure, if the infrastructures had been there, the services would have been better. I recall that in 2001, the NCC charged $285 million for each of the licensees. And that is over and above what they pay in other African countries, including South Africa. And so having to pay such huge sums of money way back in 2001, having to provide their own, road security, water, and virtually everything. So they've become a local government on their own. That has exponentially increased the cost of providing services. But I think dialogue option is still the best way out, because much as Engineer Gbenga in Lagos is trying to make us believe that they are facing a lot of operational challenge, I like the question asked about the huge dividends that have been declared. And many of these mobile operators are not on stock exchange. In fact, I'm not sure if anyone is on Nigerian stock exchange for Nigerians to even buy in and be part of that profit making. So what is the scare? Why are they not, why are all of the mobile telephone services not allowing Nigeria to buy into that? So if they need more money, for instance, if they sell shares to Nigerians and Nigerians have a sense of belonging that they are part of, they are co-owners of these mobile telephone operators, maybe things will smoothen out. Maybe we will complain less. But right now, it is not just satisfactory. We live by it. We can't do without it. In fact, sometimes I ask myself, how have we been living before 2001? Because virtually every day now, even an old person who is illiterate cannot do without his or her mobile phones. It has made our lives easier and better. You can call your mechanic to come pick your car to fix it. You don't have to travel unnecessarily because you can call your old mothers in the village to say, how are you faring, mama? You don't have to do so many things because even when you are not feeling fine, you call your colleagues in the office, I'm not going to be able to come now. Unlike before, when it's only people like you seated there that could afford the Turayas and the nighttime provided services. So things have improved largely, but I think in terms of cost, in terms of infrastructure, there's still a long way to go.
Why were you pointing at me?
You were using
you should have also brought in a DJ of CPC. Well, I mean, we've come a long way. I mean, for those who have just registered with INEC to vote, who probably were just still in their strollers at the time GSM came, perhaps you could pay a visit to the old Nitel premises, assuming those premises are available, are accessible. You will find kiosks. If you wanted to make a call, if it was an international call, you will go to a booth or a kiosk inside there, a lot of noise and so on and so forth. You'll be running. And if somebody wanted to call you, if you wanted to call your neighbor had a phone, you had to go out, go to their living room to wait for the call to come. And then the phone will ring, the one ring, the one with this. Right. So it's a long way that we've been. Yes.
Let's return to Gbenga now in Lagos. And I'd like him to speak to some of the issues raised there by Jido Ojo here. I'm sure you heard him clearly, and also the fact that you declare huge dividends every financial year, and you also complain of so many challenges facing the operators. You also raised the issue of non-availability of enough terrestrial fiber to, of course, do your business. Speak to all of this as we round it off, because, of course, you understand you are leaving for another event.
Let me say, you can have me on air for as long as you want me, because this is my day job. And so, so long as there are issues to deal with, I will be glad to continue the conversation. A lot has been said, no doubt, but the fact that we are discussing this problem is also because we are making progress. Let me say that the issue of the consumer experience, we take ownership as an industry, we take ownership. But as I said earlier, it's the effect of a course of action. There are factors leading to problems of consumer experience. Actions of government, like I said, willful damage to infrastructure, legal seizure of sites, closure of telecom sites, and all that. And I do believe, like has been said, that perception is everything, and the industry is doing a lot to improve on the public perception. But we all must take joint ownership of telecom infrastructure. It's an infrastructure that provides services for all of us. Either we are in government, we are in private sector, we are students. We all own the infrastructure, and we all must take every necessary effort and steps required to protect this infrastructure. The problems that we have many a times, they are traceable to actions, in most cases, of agents of government. Now, On feedback for consumers, communication, yes, I agree, we have to improve on that. On the issue of multiplicity of telephone handset, use of telephone handset, I think it's becoming a cultural issue that people, either for reasons of the kind of lifestyle they live, they want to have more than one device, because today we have what we actually call co-location and co-sharing, meaning that one common infrastructure actually serves multiple operators. So most likely, experience with one operator at any particular time will be common experience across various networks. And we need to shift away from this culture of multiplicity of devices, because many times, in most parts of the country where you have adequate coverage, you will have the same grade of service on many of the networks. So because at the end of the day, it's all networks in one network. We all operate one national network. So I beg to differ that the issue of carrying a multiplicity of handsets today is because of really issue of quality of services, because as I said, I think the experience in some cases will be common. But we are committed to improving on quality of service. NCC has very severe sanctions for identifiable infractions, but government must assist the operators. We must assist the industry. The industry is not operating in isolation of the challenges of the economy and of our social environment. I'll give an example. Due to security, there are some parts of the country today that where you have failure at certain time of the day, you can't access it till several hours later. I mean, Abuja Kaduna Express, for example, if you have failure on a particular side there, for reasons of security, you can't send men there at 11 o'clock at night. Lagos Ibadan Express Road, the same thing. Lagos Benin Express Road, the same thing. And there are many hotspots like that across the country that when you have service failure, identifiable service failure, you just must wait for certain hours when it is safe enough to access site. During this period of outage or destruction of services, the consumer experience will be affected. And these are some of the problems that we are seeing. And that's why we are advocating and requesting as an industry that we should be classified as critical national socio-economic infrastructure and accorded the first level of protection, like Nitel enjoyed in their days, like NEPA enjoyed in their days, that those infrastructure are seen as critical socio-economic infrastructure and accorded the first level of protection. But the assurance I'd like to give to the public this morning is that as an industry, we are committed to improving quality of service. It's a lot of work in progress. We'll continue to work at it. We're not unmindful about the public perception, and all that we can do as an industry to improve on public perception, I can assure you we are committed to doing so. Thank you.
Engineer Adebayo, very quickly, I would like you to respond to this, because our two guests here in the studios appear not to quite agree with some of the propositions you've just made. Are you saying that the subscriber base that the operators often brag about, now some 160 million, is it a function of inefficiency? I don't need 2 telephones, for instance. I don't need 2 or 3 lines. What is cultural about that?
Certainly not a function of inefficiency. We are 160 million subscribers. They are registered, they are identifiable, but a number of them are business related, a number are due to personal life usage. So it depends on who is involved. Because I do not see, for instance, why a man needs 4 telephone handsets. It doesn't sound normal, actually. So you have one handset across one network. We operate one national network. So if you have problem on one network, you want to go to the second, the third, and the fourth. If it's one national network, today we talk about co-sharing, about co-location. So many times in certain areas, one infrastructure actually serves more than one service provider. So it's most likely that the experience will be the same across networks at any point in time. So what I am saying is that we do have 160 million subscriber lines. It is not to say that those numbers are as a result of inefficiency, because even if it be the inefficiency, you will not have 160 million people who are subscribers who are registered, and they are doing so for reasons of make good, make better on the other one. So it's a cultural thing that we need to begin to address. People should begin to ask themselves, do I really need more than 1 device, or do I really need more than 2 devices? For someone to have 4 telephone handsets, I'm sorry, it sounds a bit unusual, actually. And I'll say to you that quality of service experience is a problem that you experience in any network across the world. I mean, those of you who travel very frequently know that there are also times when outside of the country, you are either in a gray area of service, area where there is low grade of service, area where quality of service or quality of call is poor and all that. And those are even some countries that are fully built in terms of public infrastructure. So in an environment where it is what it is, sometimes you have diesel outage, you can't repair the site. Sometimes the governor has gone to close the site because the operator hasn't paid his revenue to him. And sometimes the locals have seized the site because they need now certain money to be paid to them. Sometimes right of ways, works is going on the highway, the fiber is cut, you can't do anything because there is government work in progress and all that and all that. So a combination of all these factors often lead to consumer experience. But I do not think that carrying 4 telephone handsets in today's grade of service is the right response to quality of service. I do not think so.
Right, well, let's bring in the CPC DG to respond to what he just said. Mr. Rukara.
Well, I respectfully but strongly disagree with Mr. Adebayo. I mean, the nature of the complaints we receive, and as we compare them, clearly demonstrates that people are experiencing their frustrations on account of the different networks. I, for one, I carry only one telephone line, and on repeated occasions from family, friends, and co-workers, they've repeatedly said to me that some of the frustrations you have with communicating that you express is because you have only one telephone line, especially when you're traveling. I mean, my iPad, my data is a different company from my cell phone. And I know that when I'm traveling at home in Kogi State, I'm more likely to receive data on my iPad and not have on my telephone. And then there are places where I have on my telephone and I do not have on my iPad. I do not know the technology. I understand co-location, but I have absolutely no questions or doubts in my mind that depending on what network you're on, your access and service materially differ in different parts of the country. There's absolutely no question about that, regardless of what technology. I don't know what the technology is, but I know that that's the experience.
All right, thank you. And it may interest us to know that China, with the huge population it has only 3 GSM operators, and how they capture the entire population perhaps is a matter of technology. Well, at this point, we are through to South Africa via Skype, and that's where we have the chairman of Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, Professor Omar Garba Dambata. Professor Dambata, good morning from Nigeria. I hope you can hear us clearly. Professor Dambata, we are saluting you here from Nigeria. Can you hear us so that we can engage you in this conversation? All right, it does seem that our audio line is not through yet, and so let's return to Abuja here and, of course, talk to Chide Ojo. Of course, you had Engineer Benga and the response from the CPC DG. What's your own reaction to what he has said?
Engineer Benga is doing his job. Professionally, he has to speak in defense of the operators. But experience has shown, and point of correction, I didn't say I'm carrying 4 mobile phones. I said I have 4 mobile lines. Thankfully, there are dual SIM phones. So on 2 phones, you can have 4 lines. And that's actually what I do. I have 4 mobile lines, not 4 phones. I don't need to carry 4 phones anyway. The bottom line is, you see, you don't have to be unduly defensive. We live in the same economy. We go around this country. We are the one making you to declare those dividends. And I think to some extent, they actually are ripping us off. I mean, look, I'm happy that there is a competition that has brought down the cost. But you know, the argument when one of the mobile telephone operators was about to come to the market, and they said, no, we can't do per second billing. It's not possible. The technology does not, we can't do this. But that mobile operator came into the market from day one to do per second billing. Then all other ones were forced to go per second billing, which shows that deliberately they want to keep us in perpetual servitude, knowing full well that mobile telephone has become an inelastic demand, which you cannot do without. And when you cannot do without something, you have to pay the price no matter how much. So I think it should just not be unduly defensive. We all are citizens of this country. There are problems to be fixed. Consumers are not happy. We deserve better deals than what we are experiencing, particularly given the cost that we have had to pay. We sympathize the fact that they have to, the operational cost is huge, and one would have wished, just like every Nigerian's wished, that the infrastructures are fixed for us to do business better. That's why government is talking of ease of doing business now, to make things easier for us, to lessen the operational cost, the production cost, so that the final consumer can have it cheaper. But be that as it may, that's not to say, if the picture is painting what to be true, why is it that at least the top four are declaring huge profit in spite of the so-called percentage? And that's why those governors will also insist that they have to pay, because they know, they read papers, they read their annual reports to see the huge billions of naira. Look at one of the operators that was sanctioned by the federal government just recently for expropriating some of their dividends out of this country. These are monies that ordinarily should have been domiciled in Nigeria, used to expand infrastructure, as it were, improve services for Nigerians. So with due respect, I think it wasn't speaking the minds of Nigerian consumers.
All right. We understand that we have another clear now to return to the Executive Vice Chairman of NCC, who is with us via Skype. Well, of course, he's giving a thumbs up again. Professor Danbata, can you hear us now?
I can hear you very well. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. We're discussing 17 years of GSM. You know, you've been in office around about 3 years or so. But what is the disposition, or if you like, what's the evaluation of the NCC of the 17 years since telephony was literally, again, democratized in Nigeria?
I think you need to repeat that question, please. It came, but a bit distorted. I didn't get it very well. I'm sorry.
What does the NCC think of the Nigerian experience with GSM 17 years later, from the perspective, 1, of a regulator, 2, operators, and 3, consumers?
I think the GSM experience has transformed lives, the condition of students in the country. Like you rightly said, this is about 17 years explaining the issuance of digital mobile licenses to the first set of operators in the industry. Remember, that was the time when the industry was liberalized. It was a decision that was taken very well. That was a very good decision. Today, we are seeing the results of that, the results of liberalization from a little under 500,000 subscribers of telephone services to close to 160 million subscribers. The industry, I'm talking about the communications industry, has equally empowered students through employment, through the provision of...
Sorry, Professor Danbata, that's the audio is distorted. We can hardly pick out what you're saying. My colleague Kirian and I have that challenge, the same thing I believe with our other 2 guests who are here with us. If at any point in the course of the remainder of the program we're able to get that clearance, we'll return to you. But let's go over very quickly now to Lagos again. Engineer Adebayo. Engineer Adebayo, a number of points have been raised. I would like you again to speak to this. Yes, you've talked about the good side. You've also talked about the challenges. But oftentimes, factor this in Nigeria, it's a common phrase, international best practices. When you make a comparison, for instance, with telephony services of the GSM variety in some other climes, say in the fairly advanced world, you have, the pricing system is different. You also have the incentive system, which is different. 100 free minutes, free calls at certain locations or at certain times of the day and so on and so forth. But here, as the DG of CPC has said, consumers are paying, but they are upset with you because they believe that you are extorting them on account of your, again, usurious pricing mechanism. Why aren't we having some of the incentives that you find elsewhere for consumers? Not the kind of, half a penny incentives that we get here from GSM providers.
Okay, thank you. Before I will speak on the issue of pricing, I'd like to clarify 2 points from my co-panelists. One is on the grade of service available on different networks, and the second is on the issue of taxation due to huge dividends. I'd like to speak to that by saying that will you then introduce extractive taxes because they are declining dividend? That's the big question we should raise. Should we introduce extractive taxes and levies because companies or industries, certain industries are declaring dividend? That's the question we need to take home. The second I would like to respond to is on the quality of grade of service across various networks. I did say that many a times the operators are shared by common infrastructure. I didn't say in all cases. And in those cases where infrastructure is shared by multiple operators, the experience is likely to be the same. In some states, we have governments of states isolating certain operators and penalizing them with taxes. I don't want to go to specific states, but we have cases like that where operator A is protected from one tax, but operator B is made to pay that particular tax for certain reasons that are inexplainable. So, and when we now take that to international best practice, you don't have these things happening in those climes. Infrastructure in those climes are protected by the state. If you run into telephone pole in England, it's not the BT that owns the telephone that owns the pole that will prosecute you. It's the state that will prosecute because that's the state common infrastructure. But we don't have that protection here. Now, on the issue of pricing, I did say in my earlier intervention that it's cheaper to buy bandwidth between London and Lagos than it is to buy bandwidth between Lagos and Abuja. And that is because of the cost of providing the service. If you pay, if right of way, for example, amounts to 70% of the cost of doing a particular fiber project, then certainly the end user price will be high. And quite frankly, there is really nothing free in life. In those places where certain things are offered for free, in other areas, most likely people will pay for them. So, but it is not an excuse for poor grade of service. I'm saying that the issue of poor grade of service, we are aware about it, we take ownership, but they are due in most cases to problems that are beyond the operators. And that's what I'm emphasizing. This is why I said again that we must take collective ownership. It's a common infrastructure that serves all of us. I like to have the best of consumer experience because I also pay for the services. But the fact remains that if the environment is hostile and is not friendly enough for operator to provide certain grade of services, then we who own the environment must take collective ownership. And that is the point I'm making. We must take this problem away from the doorstep of operators and challenge government to give us the right environment to operate. If we have the right environment to operate, some of the problems that we have today will not be there. In certain cases, even in Abuja, it's difficult to have good quality of service. The problem of Abuja is being withdrawn is historical. Because we are told that when Abuja master plan was made over 35, 40 years ago, there are no provisions for such sites. Abuja is declared in most cases as green areas. So we've had problem of installing physical infrastructure in some parts of Abuja. It's been a historical problem that has been with us for many years now. Same experience in certain parts of the country. So, and if this impacts on our ability to deliver good grade of service, we take ownership for that. But the problem can be solved by the government of the state. That's the point I'm making. So you have one state governor who has closed one site because he's upset with the operator on that site for not paying his effluent charge. The site that he has disconnected is connecting 30 other sites from 3 other states surrounding him. What do we say to that? What do we say to that? So these are the problems, and we must take collective ownership, joint ownership of the infrastructure that serves all of us. Then we'll have better grade of service. Thank you.
I asked a question earlier about the intensity of your intergovernmental relations engagement. And you said, oh, you're constantly engaging with it. But if these problems have persisted over the past decade or more, it would appear that you aren't getting the appropriate response. That's essentially telecoms operators aren't getting the appropriate response from the authorities. But let's bring in again the CPC Director General to respond to some of the points you just made. Along with that, Mr. Rukera, let's take a look at this. Consumers are complaining. You said it very appropriately, that people who are paid for the services despise the service of providers because they feel that they have been extorted. And here we are, the evidence points to the fact that, look, this business is profitable. And for good measure, the telecoms operators have sometimes been compared with the power sector providers to say, listen, see what we have experienced with telecommunications, see what they have done. Nobody's trying to sell out and so on and so forth. But 5 years after privatization of the discos and the gencos, all we are hearing, all kinds of excuses and challenges. But in terms of pricing, what is it that can be done? Demand and supply alone will not appear to suffice. The consumers, again, to use your words, the consumer feels extorted, from the charges that we have, and the evidence is there that despite the challenges that the operators face, they are declaring humongous profits.
Well, the point is a fairness test. It is not unusual for consumers to want to pay less for whatever it is they are paying for all over the world. And that's a challenge that operators must always, or sellers of anything, must always deal with. But the way the market operates is that it finds a point, because price is a negotiation between a service provider or good seller and the people who buy. And so there are market operations, competition, availability, priorities, and all of those factors come into pricing. And so I think that the pricing mechanism is relatively robust. The bigger problem here is that there are other factors in market operation and consumer service that create the complaints. For instance, the biggest thing that people complain about is value for the money they're paying, primarily. That's primarily. Now, of course, people will complain about how much they are paying, but that's the more secondary issue and a generally prevalent issue. There's hardly a consumer protection authority that will jump into a situation simply because people say, well, I'm paying a lot. I'm paying a lot is even different from I'm paying too much. I'm paying too much is typically a comparative analysis of price and value. Certainly not an analysis of out-of-pocket itself. And I'll give you a quick example. If, for instance, you say co-location is the technology today, and here you are saying that in some states, the authorities there treat the operators in a disparate manner. And so if they're going to close down a mast because some operator hasn't paid their tax, can they close half a mast? If these masts are co-located, would all operators suffer for that? And when all operators suffer for it, won't all consumers suffer for it? So there's certainly there's something about the technology that makes it possible to address some of these issues. And so I agree that we must continue to compare ourselves internationally to look for the global standards. But then, again, those arguments are always two ways. I don't know if it's because I'm a lawyer, but there are two ways. So here you are, you're in a country that doesn't provide the same protection as the British government provides to infrastructure, and it's a government infrastructure. We must all take ownership of it. That's fine. But okay, quick question. I understand the roaming charges to be, in many instances, a function of prevailing rates in the country where you're roaming into, and an acceptable margin by the company, the host operator. Meaning if you're roaming your Nigerian line abroad, your Nigerian operator has little control over the rates of the foreign operator. And so essentially they just include a margin, and that's what the case is. But here we are, from what I understand, bandwidth between Abuja and Lagos is more expensive than bandwidth between Lagos and London. But, so that means services are generally more affordable in London than in Nigeria, in part because of the cost of doing business. However, when you take your phone from Nigeria and you're roaming in London, you're paying an extremely high charge, far higher than what you're paying in Nigeria. So it would raise the question of if the rates are naturally or ordinarily cheaper in London, like you represent, when you roam there, shouldn't your service, even after the host company margin, shouldn't your rates be comparable to what you pay in Nigeria?
Yeah.
But no, they're significantly more. Yeah. And so all of that plays into all those global standards that we must adopt both ways. And so, and I think that those are the analyses that consumers make and then come to a determination that the whole system seems unfair.
Yeah. You see, every business has its own secret, and Wenga will return to you much later to address some of the issues raised by the CPC, DG, and of course GDOJ, because all of these, they'll bother on the professional efficiency and proficiency and of the operators. And again, there was one point raised by Jide here, that none of these operators, none of them is in the stock exchange, and they deny Nigerians access to being part owners of their establishments. And we will address that when we return from this short break. Also, many Nigerians are beginning to react to the conversation by way of tweets, and we'll have them here. When we come back from the break, we'll let you know. Stay with us, and good morning, Nigeria.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. But in so celeb, change begins from within. Look at you, oh Gerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with
All right, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. Let's go straight away down to the tweets that have come in through our Twitter handle. You can see there at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen at NTA GMN. Chris Asha has this tweet. I was young when my dad bought a SIM card for 25,000 naira.
All right. Then from Omo Bola, he says the journey has been that of mixed feelings, exploitation of the Nigerian masses. The political class played a willing tool in the hands of financial operators to exploit their own people. Whoever thought same SIM card that went for as high as 30,000 naira at start would be almost useless today.
Aminu Modibo tweets. Now, the journey has been good so far, despite the challenges we're facing in the country.
All right, from Thomas Bangun, GSM revolution in Nigeria has been a blessing, but still it has created avenue for huge capital flight. Let's plug the holes.
Law Alpha C. It's been a checkout sojourn with the GSM providers in Nigeria. They have succeeded in bridging the communications gap. It is ugly when the government finds the GSM providers for service not rendered and the operators find a way to recoup the money from customers.
Festus Akimboyewa says GSM is the best thing that ever happened to Nigeria. It has become the vital tool for communication, financial inclusion, and access to internet through mobile devices. More regulation of the sector is needed so that Nigerians will not continue to be shortchanged.
Clifford Agugwese, it says quantum leap compared to where we're coming from.
All right, Sani Omar, UK, it says our service providers are not helping our country. Look at the kidnappings that take place in our country. The service providers do not play any role in finding terrorists that make calls and demand for money.
And Sani Michael Makoji says, yes, we can talk of service breakdown occasionally, but it is now far better than those dark days of NITEL. Besides, the revolution in the telecom sector has generated employment for Nigerians.
Clifford Agwegusi, an assessment of telecom consumers in Nigeria will reveal quite a lot. Those who know what is happening, those who have no knowledge about what is happening, and those who wonder what is happening. Do we expect their responses to be the same? No is the answer. What can be done then to ensure that consumers are equalized, so to speak, in terms of their expectations from their service providers? This is the critical role the regulator, the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, has to play, and is playing. It is not Uhuru yet, he says.
Daniel Nwimo tweets, I can gladly say that GSM in Nigeria has truly revolutionized the Nigerian telecommunications sector. However, there are people making a fortune from the GSM market and exploiting Nigerians, especially during this period. Such should be abated in all ramifications.
All right, now, Ibrahim Jibril Adavize, he says the extortion, monopoly, that's the reason why they are not in Nigerian stock exchange. If they are, all Nigerians would have been making impact in ensuring that their services improve. Mr. Irukera has been trying honestly, and he needs to do more. Quality of service, poor.
Oni Michael, 17 years of GSM, it's good to hear, with lots of benefits, but are we maximizing it? Politically, for security, and also economically, its effect on the people is, according to him, 50% good, 50% bad. Now, GSM is like a pepper. It hurts, yet we can't spit it out. All right, that's, I just, Kiri, I mean, you've been on this point, and the other guys have also spoken to that, particularly Jidojo. Engineer Adebayo, what has been the constraint or the reluctance on the part of GSM operators that are private companies today from going public?
I do not know if that is something that can be achieved by legislation. I think those are commercial decisions that have to be taken by the business owners. I am aware that there are 2 or so operators who are in the stock exchange. I remember very well Starcoms was in the stock exchange before they sold out. But I do not know whether it's right to enforce that by legislation. I think it is something that will have to be commercial decisions to be taken by the business owners. I'm not aware of any constraint whatsoever and howsoever, but I think that those are things that decisions that are left to the business owners than something that can be enforced by legislation. I'd like to speak to the other part of the argument, which again is on the issue of consumer perception and customer satisfaction. We take ownership because at the end of the day, we are the ones that is known. We are the ones that is facing the subscribers. My argument is around the fact that at the back end, there are factors militating against quality of services that are beyond the service providers. The DG mentioned about the issue of roaming and cost of roaming. Why cost of roaming in England to England, for example, is more expensive than, a lot of elements. There is a local charge, there is a roaming charge, there is the exchange rate and all of that. And so we will not be right to say that roaming charge in England is cheaper, or services there are cheaper, and when you roam into England, for example, you roam into other countries, you pay a lot, because there are many elements that account for pricing of roaming. But at the end of the day, when let's shift away from voice a little, look at what data has done for everyone today. And so the emphasis we should look at today, we should look at telecom more globally as a solution to many needs than just as a line of communication. Because with data today, you can do almost all and everything. Information available there, medium of communication and channels available there. And at the end of the day, the way technology is going, pricing of services will no longer be a factor for the consumer. The way technology is going, I think the options that will be available by technology will give the consumers a lot more choices than we currently have. And
sorry, Engineer Adebayo, we have to jump in here. When I asked the question about what challenges, if any, with Engineer Adebayo, when I asked the question about why GSM operators, I know you talked about Starcoms is no longer in the market, to the best of my knowledge, but we know the big names in the GSM market. Why they haven't moved from being private entities to being public, in other words, getting to be quoted on the stock exchange. I didn't underlay that with compulsion or with legislation. I'm just saying, what has been the business reluctance? Is it that you want to keep the shareholders few in number so that the dividends can continue to go around the way it's been going around? And that's a complaint by the consumers. That's one leg. I didn't talk about legislation. The second leg, you talked about the cost of bandwidth, say between Abuja and Lagos versus, say, Lagos or Abuja and London. What accounts for that high differential in the cost of the bandwidth?
Cost of deployment and cost of running the services. The submarine cable is not susceptible to damage. Once it's laid, it's there and it's protected by international laws. Here, we pay very high for bandwidth, and we pay very high for right of way. We pay very high for cost of maintenance and restoration. When roadworks are going on, there is no regard for existing infrastructure. Those services are disrupted, they are damaged, and operators have to pay for cost of relaying them. So it's more or less the operating environment. First is the cost of deployment and the challenges and problems of the operating environment. That's what basically accounts for that.
Well, thank you, Engineer Wenga, but you have not necessarily addressed the issue of the huge dividends declared by these operators at the end of every financial year, because all of that, should be considered, perhaps with what you've told us about the challenges you're facing and the huge sums of money you pay for bandwidth. Now, let's go to Jido Joe for him to speak to some of the issues that you have raised. And I want him to pay particular attention to the fact that the operators have deliberately, because there's no constraint, deliberately avoided going public. That's number one. And many Nigerians would also suggest that that is some level of, lack of sincerity of purpose in a country that is generating huge sums of money for these operators, which are declared, and we know what it is. Jido, could you address some of those issues?
Very well. One will have thought that much as it's a business decision for a private enterprise to either go public or not to go public, but giving the Nigerian public a sense of belonging will affect them more. Because when you have Nigerians also making money out of their own investment in that kind of very profitable venture, the complaint would not go outrightly, but it will be less, because a lot more people will say, yeah, you are providing jobs for us, but we are also investing and are getting some profits from our investment. But for them to have kept the public out of it, I really don't know. It's, again, part of their own business decision. But there is something else I want to call our attention to. I think with due respect, Nigerian legislature, Nigerian parliament need to do a lot more in terms of regulation of this sector. I'm not sure all the laws are in place that could get, and I'm not saying punitive laws. I'm also talking about laws that can protect those critical infrastructures. For instance, why should a state governor charge differential rate or collect tax from one and not collect from other? maybe we can have legislation that stipulates, no, you can't do this. Whether you are a governor or you are a subnational or federal government, these are your parameters of your intervention. So maybe that kind of protection can be offered through legislation to protect them and their investment so that they will continue not to divest, or we will not continue to have the kind of capital flight, because there is also a serious problem of capital flight in this sector. They make a lot of money, but such monies are not even allowed to domicile here. They find one creative way or the other to move their dividends out of our economy. That is not helping the economy. That is, I mean, they could say, yes, we are contributing to GDP, we are the highest, this and that. But a lot of things can still be done better, both in terms of legislation, in terms of regulatory agency, coming more on the side of the consumer to protect consumer. I know that recently, I don't know whether it's CPC or NCC that said that when we don't want unsolicited text messages, we should send 2442 or something to a particular code. But no sooner as they exit you from that, they enroll you on another. So where should that happen? Exactly. Where should you be bombarding me with text messages that I don't need? And when I said discontinue, you still find a creative way of bringing me back and charging me for something that I didn't solicit. So a lot still needs to be done. It's a lot better than the power sector on a comparative note, but it is not yet we rule, like one of those who tweeted said. A lot more still needs to be done, particularly in terms of consumer protection and also the protection of investors, because we cannot actually wish away some of those complaints laid by Engineer Gbenga Adebayo. They are genuine complaints that must be 17 years on. We cannot continue to wish it away if nothing is done in time. And I will encourage members of these operators to go to court. If political settlements have failed to yield dividends, to make some of the governors know the impact. Because like he said, like Engineer Adebayo said, consumers don't want to know that you are having an issue with a state governor. When they off a site and I can't make calls, I can't have access to my data, I complain to CPC, I complain to the regulatory agency. So they need to find, if the dialogue option is not working to resolve many of these issues, then they should approach the court to get some court decision to help them finally lay that to rest.
All right. Well, Engineer Adebayo, has there been any headway with regard to testing some of these issues in the law courts, especially with the kind of frequent disruptions to your services, as well as attendant escalation in the cost of operation from the activities of state governments?
Yes, we have. We're in court in some states. We're in court also at the federal level. We are also even in court with the parliament, with the Senate on a different subject, which is also relating to smooth operations. But the fact remains that we cannot isolate our problems from our environment. That's a fact. The other thing I'd like to comment about is on the issue of the listing in the stock market. I can't speak for business owners, but I think that's best left to business decisions to be made. I think if they find it expedient to do so, I'm sure that they will not be reluctant in listing in the stock market for the benefit of everyone. The other side of it, which I will also like to make a quick remark about, is on the issue of consumer redress. When you are dissatisfied with the grade of service provided by your operator, there are channels to redress those grievances. If you don't enlist for a service and you are enforced into a service, there is a procedure for exiting from it. If you are re-enlisted, there are channels for addressing grievances. And I will advise, encourage the public to try and test those mechanisms as well. I think if it is all tested, it has enabled us to take better ownership of some of the problems that we have. Thank you.
All right, as we're winding up this program, let's get CPC's view in just a few seconds.
Well, the bottom line, like I said, where I started, that I think we get mad in all the discussions about what pricing is happening in other places and all these infrastructure issues. There are a few things. I think the biggest issues for us at the CPC with respect to telecoms is responsiveness. Just sheer responsiveness. Secondly, transparency. Surely those are not infrastructure issues. So all these issues, I mean, if consumers have to run around repeatedly to opt out of services that they didn't solicit and which are being deducted from, then there's a lack of sensitivity and responsiveness. It should be the other way. I should opt into something I would pay for. You should not enlist me automatically into something and then I struggle to opt out. So it's that responsiveness and transparency. The billing system, the technology can provide the transparency on usage and billing. And that really, if we address responsiveness and transparency, we would have gone a long way in addressing what a lot of the dissatisfaction of consumers are.
All right, at this point, we'd like to thank you indeed, Director General of the Consumer Protection Council, Mr. Babatunde Irukara. Thank you for your contributions. And Mr. Jide Ojo, who is always here for us, well, thank you for your very incisive contribution this morning.
Thanks for the honor.
All right, and in Lagos, Engineer Buenga Adebayo, we had thought you were not going to stay with us all through, but we're happy that you did after all, and that has also assisted us to, of course, look at some of the critical issues concerning telecommunication in Nigeria. Thank you indeed for your time and your professional thoughts.
Thank you.
I apologize to our viewers that our Skype connection from South Africa wasn't helpful because of the conversation we had the Executive Vice Chairman of the NCC, Professor Dan. But at some other point, I hope that we're able to return to that. And that does it for our conversation segments. Let's go over now to sports.